I'm Cindy Lauper. My psoriasis was all over, even on my scalp, which may mean 4 times the risk for psoriatic arthritis. But Cosentyx works on both.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis 300 milligram dose and adults with active psoriatic arthritis 150 milligram dose. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at Cosentyx.com or 1-844-COSENTYX. Ask your doctor about Cosentyx.
Citizens of Nowhere by Michael Rosen. We may not have an anthem, we may not have a flag. We are the world of people who move on. We are called migrants, immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, stateless, no papers, on the run. We are, they say, a diaspora. We are, they say, between cultures, or a mosaic of cultures. Sometimes we are, they say, rootless cosmopolitans or citizens of nowhere. Sometimes they say, or we say, we are in exile. But that asks us to imagine we are spending all our time looking back over our shoulder. We are supposedly in a limbo, lacking something that everyone else has got, and the only solution is for us to join in the anthem and grab the flag. Only then will we become the real deal, a full human being. Up until then, they say we are divided, split people who are less than whole, just hanging, suspended in a state of longing for what's been before and longing for something here that we can't ever have, no matter how hard we try. But there's no need to try. This true state of being that can only be true when it's a not migrant, not immigrant state of being that we have to long for, we can say we are the travellers and movers, the sometime settlers, the migrants, the immigrants, the diasporas. We exist. We live, we work, we eat, we breathe. We may look after others, we may be looked after. We may find love, love may find us. But we don't need shame. We don't need guilt. We don't need to hide. We don't need to apologize. We don't need to beg or grovel. We are the world of people who travel. We are the people who leave, people who move, people who arrive. Yes, we can say we have arrived, but we may leave again and arrive again. You cannot sum us up as purely of one place simply because we are in that place. Your snapshot of us may say we are here, it may say we are there, here or there or here, but in a life, we might be both here and there. In a family, across generations, parents, grandparents, children, we might be both here and there and here. And we are not less for being so. Welcome to Quiet Riot, a politics podcast that loves immigrants. I am one, and I'm Andreou.
And I'm Naomi Smith, someone who doesn't have a tattoo, but if I did, it would probably be something like, I heart immigration, emigration, and castration for those who don't.
You get the gist. We're here as an antidote to hate and as advocates for hope.
So make yourself your favourite fusion food and snuggle up to begin another Quiet Riot.
Hello and welcome to Quiet Riot. I'm Alex and I'm Greek.
I'm producer Kenny, a Devonian-dwelling Highlander who arrived here via Wales.
And I'm Naomi, a Londoner with strong links to Ireland. Oh, and my DNA, apparently, is at least 7% Swedish.
Woohoo!
Oh, I could have told you that. This week, we had hoped to bring you a Liberal Democrat voice to discuss the local election results, but we've postponed that so we can have a guest-free edition to talk about immigration, the policy around it, Starmer's language and his recent speech, and how progressives should respond.
And we'll also talk about the UK-EU summit, which is now just 4 days away. What can we expect? What gets kicked into the long grass? And will there be any unexpected surprises?
So, no guest this week, but plenty more of me instead. Ha ha! So let's crack on. Quiet, riot. An Island of Strangers. Keir Starmer's ill-judged speech on immigrants was a significant milestone on his own political journey, beginning as a young socialist lawyer, warning in 1988 that Britain's migrant rules have a racist undercurrent which permeates all immigration law. From that starting point, Starmer has wandered not west or north, as a migrant might, but rather struck out to the right, as a political mercenary might. Having cast himself into some extremely choppy waters, Starmer this week emerged dripping into an unwelcoming political landscape, busy with people who didn't like his language, didn't trust him or his opportunism, and thought he really should go back where he came from, philosophically. How very, very appropriate, you might say. Now, whatever your view on the debacle, Starmer's language was at best clumsy, and it left colleagues, supporters, and a great many other people shocked, bemused, and deeply, deeply upset. Alex, as a Greek man who's made his home in Britain, let me ask you this. Did you take Starmer's speech personally, and why?
It was very difficult not to take quite personally, to be honest, especially considering that I am currently in the process of applying for citizenship. And as has been clarified today, if that is rejected, I will then need to fulfill the 10-year requirement. I mean, it's not a problem for me personally because I've been in this country 35 years. However, the evidence I had submitted was all geared around the 5-year proving a 5-year continuous residency. So I will have to go back now. If, as I said, if I have to reapply or get rejected, I will have to go back and work on the 10-year continuous period principle, which changes quite a lot. So yeah, it felt quite personal.
And have you got friends who are in a similar position? And if so, what have they said? What was their reaction?
I think everyone is quite numb. I have to say a lot of people are considering their options, and that includes me. It felt a little bit, if this country is going in that direction, even with a Labour government, then it feels like continuing to invest in a life here and a future here is just throwing good money after bad.
Well, Alex, I'm really, really sorry, and I can only imagine just how personal it all feels. And it is personal for all of us because very few people don't have immigrant relatives or are of immigrant descendant or don't have very close friends who are first, second, third generation immigrants. And we're not an island of strangers, but I feel that what Starmer has done is shown that we are a government of blamers. And the toxicity of the language and just the speed with which the
he's
whole
folded.
debate has moved in
just
the direction.
The speed with which he's folded.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
With such an enormous majority, with so little need to do it. Just before we started recording, he did a tweet, really doubling down. And there's something in the first person of it that I am finding especially setting my teeth on edge.
I haven't seen that. Can you?
He said, I've already returned over 24,000 people with no right to be here, and I won't stop there.
Oh.
It's threatening, it's chest beating, it's Trumpian. It is absolutely sickening.
And it's so unbecoming of a Labour leader. I mean, it really is. It's not just the level of offensiveness to what should be one of his core voter groups. It is the fact that it just doesn't belong in that corner of the political world, does it?
And it's not even the island of strangers phrase. It's the word squalid, which he opened with. This strategy will finally take back control of our borders and close the book on a squalid chapter for our politics, our economy, and our country. Now, he will, of course, and his spinners will, of course, say he's not talking about immigrants in and of themselves, but of the uncontrolled levels of immigration of successive governments. But he knows that that is a phrase and a word that will turn on xenophobic voters.
Yeah, we're not new to dog whistle politics in this country, are we? We've been dealing with it for an awful long time. And there's nowhere for him to hide with this sort of approach. He knows, and his handlers know exactly what they're doing with this. And the fact that he's doubling down is just further deeply upsetting evidence that it's not a clumsy attempt to move in on the reform patch. It's an overt attempt to move his entire party in a very unwelcome direction.
Yeah, I mean, peculiar that it falls to me once again to defend him a little bit. I thought the comparisons with Enoch Powell were gross and overdone, to be entirely honest. Maybe Starmer didn't know or did not pick up the language. Someone in number 10 would have and knew what they're doing. But that wasn't my problem with that entire policy in any case. You know, reading from his introduction to the white paper, inward migration exploded. I have noticed that several ministers since then have begun to refer to immigration in terms of a city the size of X, which is just a well-known right-wing trope. Britain became a one-nation experiment in open borders, which he called squalid in his speech. And I think the sentence to which I took most exception was that the damage this has done to our country is incalculable. And also I note his many references to cheap foreign labor, which I think are unbecoming of a human rights lawyer, to be honest. So he knows what he's saying. I mean, this was written text. He signed off on it. There is no way to salvage that from blowing a dog whistle to say that the reason for your problems are immigrants. I mean, that's what he's saying. However they spin it.
I don't think he's going to get more reform voters switching back to Labour than he is going to lose progressive voters away. So I think the politics of it are disastrous. People want solutions, not division. And we know that the public have a far more nuanced position on immigration than he or the media give them any credit for. But you know, we've said this time and again, you can't out Farage. People who love this stuff are going to stick with the authentic guy, not with the one who, as Kenny pointed out, said one thing 20 years ago is saying a very different thing today. But what he will be judged on is the economics. And we also say this regularly on the show. He made growth the number one ambition. So while the politics of this stinks, the economics of it doesn't add up either. Social care workers, visas being reduced for them at a time of acute social care need in the country with an aging population and an enormous number of vacancies across the sector. Foreign students, again, another cap coming in, a reduction in the numbers welcome, with no fucking plan for how university funding is going to cope with that. And yesterday I had the privilege to be with a lot of disabled people talking about the benefits bill. And there was a person there in a wheelchair who has work. They have a full-time job. And what they were saying was that the social care doesn't line up to get people into work. So the combination of all of this rhetoric around the immigration plan combined with the welfare reforms, let's call them that to be generous, that Liz Kendall is pushing through to try and get more disabled people back to work, will require social care to change quite dramatically. Because if your job is 9 to 5 and you require a carer to come in and help you with personal care, washing, dressing, maybe getting you into your wheelchair to get you on your way to work. That carer has to arrive by, at the very latest, 7:30 a.m. so that you can leave by 8:30 or whatever it is to get to work at 9. And they say, some days my carer comes at 11 a.m. or 3 p.m. or, you know, they are so overburdened, they don't have a strict schedule. So none of this is thought through. There is no cohesive economic plan for all of this. It is just rhetoric after rhetoric after rhetoric, chasing a small reform vote.
I think that's one of the things that worries me most about what I've heard on Monday, because if this, at this stage in this government, is his big policy with all the fireworks, if this is what he's getting the headlines with, it suggests to me that that's all he's got, that the cupboard is bare when it comes to other ideas that we might actually treat with some respect and might actually deserve some other respect. They're only a year in. It's a dreadful sign to be putting out there.
I think there are many things to object to in this. Politically, I agree with Naomi, it is a horrible miscalculation. I mean, fighting reform on their turf is just strategically idiotic. The first thing they did was demand a statutory cap, as did the Conservatives. I think Starmer will have no choice, having started from this position with 4 years to go to the election. He will have no choice but to give them this in the next couple of years. And he will either fail it, or they will go into the next election promising a lower cap. He's just making it so fucking easy for them. Worse still, I think, is the idea that this is the political calculation here. That with the Tories disintegrating, Number 10 has decided to move Labour to the centre right and make the next election it's either me or Farage. I just cannot emphasise how dangerous this is in a first-past-the-post environment in which the winner takes all. I think for me personally, more than anything, it has shattered any trust I might have had in him personally. Because the one thing that I held on to for a year now is his past, his record, his legacy. I have followed this man's career for almost 30 years since he gave the targets of the McLibel case pro bono help. And there are certain lines that I felt sure he would not cross. And there is a host of stuff that require an enormous amount of goodwill to interpret kindly in what this government is doing, right? To say they're probably hoping never to have to do X or to undo Y as quickly as possible. And I find now that my goodwill well is dry. And the question that just looms larger with each passing day, the question I have never been able to answer, maybe you can help me answer it, but I was hoping to at some point, is why does this man want to be Prime Minister? 1 year into his tenure, I have no idea. And I'm beginning to think maybe for the same reason that Cameron or Johnson or Sunak or Truss did, just to be Prime Minister. Because I look at his trajectory now, and it is immensely difficult not to notice just the trail of devastation he's leaving behind. Disabled people, Palestinians, trans people, now immigrants. And all I can see is someone who is willing to throw anyone out of his hot air balloon just so it can rise higher. And the devastating thing is he didn't need to do this. The government had a really good week last week. It has a massive majority in the Commons. Migration figures are about to come out, and they will be a lot lower by any measure. Everyone says so, because all the special reasons for which they were inflated last year are gone. The summit with AU is next Monday. It was just an unnecessary concession made by a coward.
I agree. I've been saying it for a while, Alex. I don't know why he wanted to be Prime Minister. I cannot tell what legacy he hopes to leave. I don't know what he is hoping the history books will write about his premiership. Because there is no Starmerism, and he very famously told us that, and it's in the books that have been written about his success at the general election in 2024, that he was very clear he didn't want there to be such a thing as Starmerism. And the danger with that is that you co-opt other people's agendas, and he's doing that very effectively. And worse still, I think, than him and his own personal brand is, what is Labour UK's brand? I know what the brand of the Reform Party is. It's hate and othering and anti-immigration. I know what the brand of the Liberal Party is broadly: pro-European, Middle England, good on individual liberties, that kind of thing. I know that the Green Party brand is around environmentalism. Nationalist parties, very obvious what theirs is. Tory party, questionably, God knows at the moment. But what is the Labour Party brand? You would have said, the party of unionised work, industrial democracy, social democracy. It's none of those things at the moment. And the only word I ever find myself reaching for at the moment is disappointment.
I mean, when you turn on the care sector, it's very, very difficult to find any kind of cogent political philosophy there. There's nothing there. There is genuinely nothing there, because I know what you say, Naomi, the idea that there is no Starmerism and that this was touted as a virtue. But the notion was that what is there instead of Starmerism is a sort of evidence-based pragmatism.
Public service.
And I'm here for that.
We will be a government of public service.
Right? I am here for that. But where is the evidence-based pragmatism when it comes to their policy on care worker visas, their new policy on care worker visas? How do you square that? I can't answer that, and I don't know that they can.
Can I ask you both then, given that we accept that Monday's speech was a horror show, is this an issue that Labour have had to lean into anyway, because it's not an issue that's going to go away between now and the next general election? And is there anything they could have done? Obviously, there's lots they could have done better, but is there anything specific that you would have looked for them to do better?
I mean, for my part, a government with 4 years to go and a huge majority was the ideal and probably the only opportunity to have an adult debate about the trade-offs involved with immigration, about what it gives, what it takes, what it costs, what it contributes, what are the alternatives. They have failed to take the opportunity to have that conversation. So I don't know where we go from here, other than some massive rebellion against Starmer, and he's chucked out of number 10, and we kind of begin again under new management. And even that, I don't know that it would work or that it could repair the damage that's been done. I genuinely do not know where we go from here, because, like I said, and I'm not squeamish about immigration control, as you know, about deporting people, about the rule of law, about fairness, about all of that stuff. I believe that the system should be hard but fair, because that is what makes life sort of bearable for immigrants. If a population does not trust the system, then a population will turn on immigration. That's what happens. So I understand the philosophical basis that lies behind doing some of this stuff. I don't understand the basis for using this language, because this language will cause people to scream at me when I go out the door. And he knows that. He's a human rights lawyer. He understands the meaning and weight of words.
Just as when a trans person is challenged entering a bathroom, or somebody non-presenting as the gender with which the toilet is assigned, as we've seen already happening in America, this will now happen to immigrants as well. And the white paper is nothing but a knee-jerk reaction to the rise of reform. And the language has been deliberately chosen to demonize and marginalize immigrants. And the white paper risks only inflaming the political debate and sets unrealistic targets and is allowing the far right to set the agenda. And when I mentioned that, the British population has a much more nuanced view of immigration than Starmer is giving them credit for. And what do I mean by that? we know that it's uncontrolled immigration that they have a real issue with, and that usually is the proxy for talking about small boat crossings, that we don't feel like we have any control over that. And of course there was nothing at all in this white paper about that. That is a completely separate issue.
Yep.
And yes, immigration numbers are set to come down anyway, and this was a very crude attempt for the government to get ahead of that and then try and claim credit for it, even though they were coming down anyway. But because of the very clement weather we're having at the moment, we are going to see a far larger number of crossings on the channel. And so he is not going to get any of the credit, because it is that perceived uncontrolled immigration, that lack of control over the border with the channel, that is going to be causing concern for the majority of Brits that are anti-immigrant in the broadest sense of the term. And our friends at Hope Not Hate did an enormous poll earlier this year, 22,500 people. In context, listeners, the average YouGov survey is about 1,800 people. And only 11% of Brits want to stop immigration permanently, and 14%, a further 14%, want to halt it until the economy improves. And the rest, the vast majority of us, are happy to accept differing levels of immigration into the country. They are perfectly happy with immigrants coming here to do the jobs that we've got that are vacant and not being filled by British people.
Quiet Riot. This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Quiet Riot. He's right about one thing, and he has dressed it up so poorly that that point has been lost. There was a very conscious decision around about 2019, 2020 to effectively inject immigration into a flatlining economy in order to ameliorate the economic effect of Brexit. That was a really conscious decision by the Johnson administration to do that, to say, right, let loads of people in so that the GDP inflates a little bit, even if it goes down in terms of GDP per capita, so that the economy looks as if it's at least treading water. That was a really cynical and very, very deliberate decision by the Johnson administration. Starmer is right about that. But the point is that the immigrants themselves that answered that call and came here and do these jobs, they've done nothing wrong. So to describe them as squalid and as doing incalculable damage is ridiculous. It's unfair. It's inhuman. Even the points on which he's right, he somehow managed to make wrong by employing this language that targets the workforce rather than the people making the decisions.
That language isn't coming from Starmer. That's almost certainly coming from Morgan McSweeney, isn't it? I wonder if his position is safe, if it's tenable, whether or not he's a lightning conductor if this continues to burn. Because, of course, this is exactly the sort of issue that really could cause a schism within the ranks of Labour. Should we be taking bets on how long he'll last now?
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned that, Alex. You said, how does this end unless he's moved out? And I was looking at who else from the Labour Grandee movement had spoken out about it. And of course, you've got Anna Sarwar, the leader in Scotland, who's now kind of joined the ranks of senior figures, at least distancing themselves from the language, if not criticising it outright.
Like
and
Sadiq
he said,
Khan.
yeah, exactly. And Sarwar said, well, it's for the Prime Minister to use his own language. The PM also said that he values the role of migrants and that he supported an immigration system that worked.
Yeah, that's the line that's gone out. I've heard that from like 10 people.
Yeah. Burnham, who's obviously for many progressives within the Labour movement, the guy that they all wish was an MP, so that he could run for the leadership again, said that he just would not give a running commentary on the PM's language. And I think that silence kind of tells you everything.
Credit to the SNP and Plaid Cymru.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've got this right. And yes, the demographics are very different in Scotland. And it is easier for Scottish parties to have a different position on immigration, because Scotland needs a lot more people, much more actively, I guess, than some places in England. But it's still to their credit that they are, the SNP, Plaid, the Greens and the Lib Dems are the only four parties I can see that are at least attempting to make a sort of positive case for immigration.
Sadiq Khan said that they are not the words I would have used. He said he wanted to thank those who are migrants for what they do. I am the son of immigrants. I can say from my own experience that I'm very proud of being a Londoner and a Brit. And he defended immigrants as, quote, not spongers or skivers. So it feels like he's probably gone further than any of the other big Labour names on this.
I mean, London, it's a city of immigrants,
Indeed.
There's, on the Plaid Cymru front, one of the moments that stood out for me from PMQs this week was when Liz Saville-Roberts asked Starmer if he had any policies that would survive a week.
Liz Saville-Roberts.
This Prime Minister once spoke of compassion and dignity for migrants and for defending free movement. Now he talks of islands of strangers and taking back control. Somebody here has to call this out, Mr. Speaker. It seems the only principle he consistently defends is whichever he last heard in a focus group. So I ask him, is there any belief he holds which survives a week in Downing Street?
Yes, the belief that she talks rubbish. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
It wasn't a Starmer response.
No, it was mean-spirited, wasn't it?
It was horrible, is what it was, really.
Yeah.
You could see him bristle as she said it. I think he was thrown off by Kemi Badenoch commenting on the arson attempts on Starmer's properties, which we're not going to get into now, but, awful, horrendous. And she'd written to him, and she then opens PMQs as saying, I'm sorry that you've had to experience that in your family, blah, blah.
Before we start, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say to the Prime Minister how horrified I was to hear about the attack on his family home. It is completely unacceptable. And I think I speak for the whole House when I say that this wasn't just an attack on him, but on all of us and on our democracy. Yesterday, we learned that unemployment is up 10% since the election. Why does the Prime Minister think unemployment is rising on his watch?
Mr. Speaker, can I thank her for her words about the attacks on me and my family and the kind messages from many others in the last few days. She did actually message me pretty well straight away, and I really do appreciate that. And she's absolutely right that this is an attack on all of us, on democracy and the values that we stand for. Mr. Speaker, she comes here every week to talk the country down. We've got 200,000 new jobs, record investment, 4 interest rates.
And I think this wrong-foots him because he then has to thank her for her words. And it is very unnatural to thank somebody and then attack them. Liz Saville-Roberts' comment or question at PMQs and his response really touched a nerve with him. You could see him bristle as she said it. And I think he's been very, very wrong-footed today, and he has not enjoyed being Prime Minister today.
Well, let's hope it's because he's ashamed of what he said, regardless how much he doubles down on it and defends it, because we live in an environment where you really can't not do that. Let's hope that somewhere inside his soul, he understands that he made a horrible, horrible mistake.
Error. And of course, his wife is Jewish and presumably, I don't know, therefore has immigrant ancestors to this country, probably 20th century ones, maybe 19th. And so, to sort of be demonizing your own in-laws is just incredible.
I mean, everything he has said in his entire career belies this moment. And that's why I guess it's come as such a disappointment to me personally. And it's making me think that the people who have said that he is as cynical and, transactional a politician as anyone we've ever seen, I'm beginning to think maybe they're right.
Is there anything that Starmer can do to win you back, Alex?
I'm not the sort of person that will say 4 years ahead of time, that's it, Labour is done. I'm never going to vote for them. I don't know what the options will be. I don't know what the polls will show. I just think that, I am now someone he needs to win back.
Yeah.
And I wasn't on that pile of people. And, I was very firmly not on that pile of people and taking lots of shit for not being on that pile of people. And so I hope someone from his team is listening. And I hope it registers that if they've managed to lose someone like me, they've really fucked up somewhere along the line. Even the economics in that speech are just outrageous. For him to turn around and say that the fact that the influx of immigrants hasn't helped GDP proves that immigration does not contribute economically to the country is just, it's mathematically illiterate.
Yep.
Because it assumes that the country would have bobbed along on zero during Brexit, during the pandemic, during the Ukraine war. And then that is quite the assumption.
Well, call to action. Listeners, the first one is, if you're an immigrant, know that we love you. If you're not, go and make sure the immigrants in your life feel loved by you and welcomed by you and supported by you. And to show your support, you can always back an organisation like the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants, or the 3 Million, who campaign on behalf of EU citizens in the UK, or back the anti-racism charity Hope Not Hate. There are more, but there's a flavour of 3 that do great work and who you might want to show your support to in defiance of Starmer's speech.
Yeah, and for God's sake, don't firebomb his tenants. They've not done anything wrong. They just rented a flat.
Hear, hear.
Quiet riot. Choosing a bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drink that's all flavor and just 100 calories? Easy. Choosing between creamy vanilla, double chocolate, and sea salt caramel flavors? A little harder. Try the delicious new Starbucks Frappuccino light drinks. Look for them wherever you buy groceries. Start with Starbucks coffee.
This week, we're mixing it up, not just by having a guest-free show, but Naomi is going to cover Wokey Dokey.
Wokey Dokey. Wokey Dokey.
Take it away, Naomi.
Okay, well, this is a nice novel treat for me to get to do Wokey Dokey. As ever, there were many things I could have chosen, but naturally, I went to Reform UK to see what they were deciding was woke this week, or which of the many things they were deciding was woke this week. And very sadly, they have stormed into control of a handful of councils after the local elections, and they have councillors that now sit on influential committees in even more. And they've decided that their first act in power should be to tackle woke pensions. Yes, apparently the single greatest threat to Britain today is your Nan's environmentally conscious retirement fund. And when you tot up all the administering authorities, which look likely to soon have at least one Reform councillor on the Pensions Committee, the Financial Times gets a number just north of 100 billion in funds. that administer local authority pension plans. And that includes about 30 billion of assets overseen by administering authorities, where they reckon reform councillors will hold the majority of the pension committee seats and votes, therefore. So they've declared all-out war on ESG investing, you know, the funds that try not to bankroll the tobacco industry, arms dealers, companies actively drilling holes in the Arctic, that kind of thing. And they're calling them, quote, ideological, which is pretty rich, that coming from a party whose entire political strategy consists of shouting the word woke in the mirror until someone claps. Now, their argument... Thank you. Their argument is that local authorities should only invest based on returns, not on ethics. And that would make more sense if it weren't for the rather awkward fact that ESG funds have often outperformed traditional ones in recent years. For example, the pension fund that covers Parliament, so MPs' pensions, records its largest allocation in the annual report as the BlackRock Low Carbon Fund, where returns were 22.1% in 2024 and 17.3% in 2023, a couple of percentage points ahead each year of the full-fat, unwoke MSCI ACWI index, which Tice is saying they should be backing. So their plan to protect Granny's pension from the woke mob might end up shrinking it, and not in a fun market forces kind of way, but in a red-faced, oh dear, we've tanked it with our own ideology kind of way. And it's not governance, it's cosplay. And at a time when councils are strapped for cash, libraries are closing, the only thing being filled with in potholes is slogans, Reform's grand gesture is to rearrange the moral deck chairs on the Titanic and shout, Greenpeace did this, not us. Because that's the truth of it. Then they don't want to solve problems. They want to pick a fight with anyone who recycles, who reads books, has any kind of moral compass. And the war on woke pensions isn't about protecting taxpayers. It's about feeding this cultural machine that runs on outrage and fumes. So I thought, I wonder what their first kind of like local press conference will be on it. And I think the statement might go something like this. We are proud to announce that under our new leadership, the Council Pension Fund will no longer be wasted on woke nonsense like renewable energy, ethical practices, or not investing in literal bombs. From now on, we'll be putting our money where our mouth is, into fossil fuels, arms manufacturing, and probably a cryptocurrency startup run by a guy called Steve who used to work in the metal shop. Because nothing says fiscal responsibility like funding the end of civilization in exchange for a 0.3% bump in Q4. And honestly, guys, if they put this much energy into public services, we'd all be living in some kind of solar-powered utopia with pothole-free roads and unicorn-based transport by now. But, you know, let's shout about the pensions instead.
Oh, Naomi, can I just say how much I enjoyed your Reform UK councillor? Do you know what you said reminded me? Just going to go back to fuming momentarily. It reminded me that on Monday afternoon, early evening, there was also just a massive coup for the Treasury. 17 big pension providers signed up to an initiative called the Mansion House Accord. They agreed to invest 25 billion more directly into the UK economy by 2030. Now, if you cast your mind back to the autumn statement, this was one of the things that both Vicky and myself had chosen as a really good measure introduced by Rachel Reeves that, you know, would generate, it made sense, it would consolidate pension funds into bigger ones and get them to invest in the UK. That happened. Did we hear anything about it? Did you hear anything about it? Did you, Kenny? No. Nope. Because everyone was talking about the island of strangers. So, bravo, Labour.
Quiet Riot. Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing, it's precision-crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. and crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision crafted performance.
Take your vibes and go, 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 go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
Following hot on the heels of a trade deal with India and tariff deal with America, on Monday, the long-anticipated summit of UK and EU leaders takes place in London Downing Street. Expectation management from both Her Majesty's government and the EU Commission has dialed up in recent weeks, with briefings, counter-briefings, leaks happening all around. Earlier this week, Politico published an article detailing the full agenda, linking to an EU Commission webpage that was instantly deleted. But never fear, we've got the screen grab and we will drop it in the show notes. Number one on the topics to be discussed is global issues, which is basically all the defense stuff focusing on Ukraine, Middle East, plus a little bit of cyber crime fighting, I would imagine, and maybe immigration. Number two is trade and exploring the potential for more of it, including agri-food, emissions trading, and youth visas. And finally, number three, existing agreements, for example, securing the rights of citizens living in each other's jurisdictions, plus deals like Northern Ireland, Gibraltar, Cyprus. They might discuss how the Erasmus rejoining has gone, etc. So, Naomi, the first question is, why the deleted page, and when might we know the running order of the day?
Well, the official line from the Commission is that it accidentally went up without having gone through all of the official internal sign-offs. But it could be, and I think perhaps is more likely, that the agenda hadn't yet been fully agreed by all parties because of last-minute tussles over the shape of the negotiations. We know that the French are still hoping for more access to fishing waters. The Spanish have their asks around Gibraltar. And of course, there will be more asks of other individual member states and some on the UK side too. But I do think we now have a much better handle on what the UK is seeking. On the chronology, Nick Thomas-Symonds, who's the minister in charge of negotiations, is briefing Labour MPs and peers today ahead of the summit. And I expect by tomorrow, Friday, there will be a formal communique outlining the details of the agenda. And then I'd imagine the government will be trying to place Sunday newspaper stories to try and control the narrative ahead of Monday and nix the headlines at the Sunday Telegraph and, you know, others will have undoubtedly already written.
What do you think we will get in terms of actual announcement? First of all, is it just one day? And will we get a communique basically at the end of the day? Will it be an afternoon one, or will it be a sort of EU Commission special that comes out at 10 to midnight? And what are we likely to get in it?
Okay, buckle up. I'm going to do my best to explain what we at Best of Britain are expecting the shape of all of this to be. So bear with me. But listeners, I think this is going to be like a good synopsis of what to expect. On the when, God knows. But I think they do want to sign something in front of cameras. Okay. So essentially, I think they're going to be three packages of announcements, and they don't line up with the three agenda items you mentioned in the introduction, Alex. So package one is going to be the big ticket around defence. And I think both sides will be hoping for an official signing ceremony on Monday for that part. The things to watch out for in the detail of the package is whether UK companies, rather like Japan and South Korea, will get access to that 150 billion euro defence fund. And crucially, what will be included around security as opposed to defence, because security seems to have fallen down the agenda in favour of defence over the last few weeks. So things like international peace and crisis management, maritime security, cyber, hybrid threats, foreign interference, critical infrastructure, and the external aspects of economic security. So that, I think, we will get something signed in front of the cameras. That will be package one, the big hurrah. Then package two is probably going to be an announcement about the things we are going to begin negotiating with each other with immediate effect, e.g., from the next day, from the 20th of May onwards. And in that group, we would expect to see the SPS deal, that agri-food deal. Will the French insist on making it time limited to coincide with fish quota renewals because they failed to get fish
again.
Yeah, well, they failed to attach fish to the defence stuff. They lost on that. So now I believe they're trying to attach fish to SPS, which is bonkers because one is about quota renewals and the other one is about regulation. And you wouldn't want to be renewing your regulation on food every 4 years. So I think they probably won't win on that one. The other thing that could be in package 2 is the youth visa scheme. And again, things to look out for. Will there be a cap on numbers? Will it be one in, one out? Will the EU demand NHS access and university tuition fee equivalents for EU young people coming into the UK? What will the timing be? 1 year, as is currently the kind of UK government position, or 2 years, or 2 years with a 1 year extension, or the full 4 years that the EU is pushing for? And then another thing I think that should be in package 2 is going to be anything linked to energy. So on that front, it's the emissions trading scheme and the cross-border adjustment mechanism. And the UK and EU aligning on those means that there can be kind of no offshore carbon dumping to avoid carbon taxes. That is the one that you should expect the Tories to brand as, oh, the UK being lumped with an EU tax and net zero nonsense, even though Sunak himself developed UK versions of these while in power. And then finally, in package 3 is where the economic boom stuff could fall. That's the stuff that we won't begin negotiating immediately, but that we could do later on this year and into 2026 when the official review of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement begins. And that's where all the stuff that might get us big GDP growth would sit, like mutual recognition of conformity assessments, mutual recognition of professional qualifications, a better deal for touring artists, and possibly PEM, the Pan-Euro-Mediterranean Convention. Now, it's our understanding that package 3 is very much something that the UK government has been pushing for and that the EU Commission has pushed back on. And this is where it gets interesting over on the EU side, because Better Britain runs the UK Trade and Business Commission, as regular listeners will know. And last month, we had an evidence session where Miguel Berger, the German ambassador to the UK, gave evidence. And it was probably the first time an EU bod had made mention of this third package at all. And the EU Commission will probably need a fresh mandate from member states to begin negotiating this package.
I see, yeah.
And that could be sought at some point in the autumn. Now, the fact that it was a German ambassador that said it, and we haven't heard it officially from the Commission, means he was sanctioned by the German government to talk about that, but not by Ursula von der Leyen, which leads us to believe that Germany, probably Ireland, probably Poland, plus some other northern EU countries are possibly quite supportive of the UK government's demands in package 3, but the other member states, here's looking at you, France, Italy, Spain, are not. And that, my darlings, is, I think, everything I can possibly tell you at the time of recording about what to expect on the 19th of May.
Quite a lot. It's quite a full slate of stuff, right?
It's not small, but I think to describe it as the starter, not the main course, is probably the best analogy. The good stuff that will really fill our bellies with economic growth is all in package 3. And at the moment, that's an intention to, at some point, negotiate rather than absolutely we're doing it right now, here we go.
Yeah, because I don't know if you managed to listen to my interview with David Hennig. His view is that we basically started moving on the package 3 stuff a tiny bit too late.
Yeah.
That the European Commission expected some more positive noises about the reset really on the day that Starmer came into government, with a big majority. And they were quite surprised that that didn't happen and that the approach was so ginger and so frightened, really. And that the UK government started to make positive noises in that direction really in the last month when everything else has been agreed.
Indeed.
But maybe the formal review of the TCA, of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, that will begin in earnest, I guess, in the late autumn, early winter, will be an opportunity to go in that direction, will it?
Hopefully. And what the UK government has to understand is that the big things that EU wanted were youth mobility and defence. And if they all get agreed on Monday, with what do we have to bargain when we want them to concede on the good stuff in package 3, which will benefit UK much more disproportionately than the EU?
No, understood. I mean, I will again point out that I think the European Union is not in the same position that it was a year ago or 5 years ago.
Or even 6 months ago.
I would say that a country like Germany would not look unkindly to even the smallest bump in its GDP right now.
Absolutely.
So maybe the mutual benefit is actually trade.
and we are going to, of course, butt up then against French elections, domestic democratic moments happening in lots of other member states through the course of the official TCA review, which will all have an impact at least on the posturing and might delay things, even if it doesn't ultimately thwart getting a much closer trading relationship.
Kenny, Scotland didn't want to leave the EU. Brexit initially at least seemed to give rise in support to cause a rise in support for independence. Do you think the reset will be sufficient to keep Remainers north of the border a bit happier?
I'd love to have a hugely uplifting message in this, but I don't see any evidence that it would be any different north of the border than it would be in the rest of the country. The same problems that the businesses and individuals in Scotland face are identical to the problems that are faced elsewhere. So I don't think that that's an area where we're necessarily going to see any huge difference between opinions up there and down where I am at the moment.
Though presumably, Kenny, Anna Sarwar will be trying to spin it as a victory as much as possible, given that you've got Holyrood elections in less than a year.
Yeah, he'd be mad not to, wouldn't he? I mean, the politics in Scotland obviously are a lot more complex than they are south of the border because of the independence issue, and the cross breaks in any surveys always make for particularly gnarly reading. That's the thing, that this is likely to be used as a political football with upcoming elections. But does that mean that there's actually anything in particular for Scots to celebrate that the rest of the country wouldn't? No, sadly, I don't think so.
Naomi, what's the call to action on this one?
Shameless plug, please support Best for Britain if you can. There is a huge misconception that we are this incredibly well-funded outfit, but the truth is we're not, and we're just really good at what we do and incredibly efficient. So it looks like, we've got money pouring out of our pockets. We've only got 12 staff, and so we do punch way above our weight when it comes to impact. And we have done so much to get the government into the position it's in on Europe. They might be failing on everything else, but they are doing the right thing in the right direction on this. And we do a huge amount to get public support for things like youth visas. We were the first organisation to publish something concrete on that nearly 3 years ago. And we never, ever sell you false promises like, oh, we can just rejoin tomorrow if you give us £5 a month. Even though, of course, we would all love that. It's really hard to raise money for what we do. And we need to keep doing it. The next 12 to 18 months are going to be absolutely critical in fending off the inevitable attacks from the Tories and Reform and other quarters as the Labour government seeks to deepen that relationship with Europe. So if you can, please head over to bestforbritain.org/donate. Thank you. Quiet Riot. Because I brought you this week's Wokey Dokey, it is now over to Alex to bring us tidings of much needed joy among the gloom. It's time for Grin and Share It.
Which I need more than anyone else. After today's episode, I mean, I was genuinely dreading it.
Good news is welcome to me. Bad news is hell come to me. Good news. Do-de-o-do-lo, do-de-o-do-lo, I want good news.
So what have you got for us?
Okay, so this is a story about, and it's a multi-layered story about the Sycamore Gap tree. You may remember that in 2023, some two dickheads basically cut it down. This is the iconic sycamore at Hadrian's Wall. The first layer to this story is that they've been convicted this week. They will be sentenced in a couple of months, but they've been convicted of criminal damage, which is wonderful to see. The second layer to this is that there's been stump growth at the gap. So I will put links to all of this underneath. Little sycamore leaves are beginning to sprout from what looks like a dead stump. And it's just so wonderful and uplifting to see. But even more importantly, the biggest layer to this story, I think, and the best news of this is that the National Trust has announced that there are now, from taking twigs and seeds from the tree after it was felled, there are now 49 Sycamore Gap saplings that are doing very well. And there is a Trees of Hope initiative. So one was just planted at Warren House on the Durham coast at the National Trust Reserve there. They will be going around, they will be planted all around the country and all around the world, actually.
Wow.
The saplings will go to other countries. They will go to woodland, wood pasture, grassland, wetlands. And so not only is the tree itself being revived, but its little kiddies are going to be thriving all over the world, 49 of the little blighters. And I think that is just wonderful. To quote Jeff Goldblum, nature finds a way.
Oh, nature is healing. No, thank you for that, Alex. We definitely needed cheering up. And I get so emotional anytime that Sycamore Gap tree story runs on the news in such a sort of visceral way that I never thought I would about, a non-sentient thing.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Maybe we need a call to action. Go and hug a tree. Go and hug a tree this weekend.
I'll drop a couple more links into the show notes because the two people who cut that tree down have been involved and questioned by police for other crimes. And they are everything you would expect, homophobic stuff and racist stuff. And
you know what? They're not. They're not immigrants.
No.
Quiet Riot.
And that's a wrap for another episode. Thank you as ever for your company and for your kind words. And if you've got any more kind words to share, why not give us a 5-star rating and a glowing review, whichever platform you're listening to us on.
Don't forget, there's just a week to go until our first birthday, which means if you're signed up to back us at ko-fi.com/quietriotpod, you'll get an invite to our next editorial meeting, which is on the 22nd of May from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Plus, you are welcome to sing happy birthday to us.
We'll be back on Sunday, but for now, keep on rioting quietly, and we hope you have a gorgeous rest of the week.
Lots of love from us all. Bye.
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 Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Alex Andreou. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta. Artwork by Simona Canelu. Quiet Riot is a co-production with Sandstone Global.
Quiet Riot.
This episode was produced by me, Alex Reese, an immigrant, and someone who has tattoos, if you remember Naomi's intro. I wonder how many backers it would take for me to get one inspired by the podcast. You'll have to go to ko-fi.com/Quiet Riot Pod to find out.